Good morning. We just crossed into Oklahoma from Kansas. That border has great historical significance in Oklahoma, and I'll get to that in a moment. We are now in an area that was formerly known as the Cherokee Strip or the Cherokee Outlet. When the Cherokee Indians were moved from North Carolina to Oklahoma over the Trail of Tears, they were given this area of land as an outlet to the hunting grounds to the west. Subsequently, the United States government purchased the land from the Cherokee Indians and opened it to settlement. In 1893, the largest land rush in history took place starting on the Kansas line. An estimated 100,000 people rushed to obtain their 40 acres of land. They came by buckwagon, horse, train, bicycle, any mode of transportation they could get. You may have seen the movie that depicted the land rush. It was called Far and Away, starring Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise. Come along with us as we learn more about the land rushes that opened Oklahoma. We are in Ponca City, Oklahoma, at the Pioneer Woman Museum. Unfortunately, it's closed. But out front is a beautiful statue. This is the Pioneer Woman Monument, dedicated to all the pioneer women that settled Oklahoma. Here we see a young, confident woman leading her son toward the southwest. We're at the Cherokee Strip Heritage Center in Enid, Oklahoma. Behind me is called the Homesteaders statue. The center is dedicated to telling the story of those who settled the Cherokee Strip and the land rush of '93. Prior to the opening of the strip, every single section had been surveyed with markers. Here's an example. One section is equal 640 acres, and a homestead was 1/4 of a section. Markers were laid out at each corner so the homesteaders could tell exactly what homestead they had claimed. Once they had marked their homestead, they took the information to a local land office for registration.
Is the only surviving U.S. land office that has survived to present day.
Anytime that anyone made the run and would stake out a claim, they would come and register that claim right here at this counter. There would be, a half dozen or so unfortunate clerks behind the counter here trying to register literally tens of thousands of people that were waiting in line trying to register those claims. Posts that are in the ground at every 1 mile, the corner of every 1 mile section. And then a quarter section post at every kind of in between, so every half mile. So what you were supposed to do is to stake out your claim. You were supposed to drive a claim flag. But all that was stopping you from someone else from claiming it is just claiming it and tearing the flags out of the ground and staking it themselves, or you have several people on the claim at once disputing who was there. Yes, these are all problems that were faced. So there would be disputes by the time you get to the land office, and you would get there and realize that several people had tried to get that same piece of land, or usually. It was mass chaos essentially for a while, but over time it started to smooth out. there were fights and there were
murders.
She's not sick. She's just hot and tired.
This is the story of Laura Ella Cruz, born in 1871. At 21, she lined up for the Cherokee Strip land run. She and her brother staked adjoining claims, and they held on to them. As luck would have it, there was oil under her land. She lived to be 105 and was the last survivor of the Cherokee Strip land run. Farmers planted a variety of crops such as corn, sorghum, and cotton the first years of settlement, but wheat quickly became the dominant crop. The wheat grown in Oklahoma is called Turkey Red. It's a hard red winter wheat. It was first introduced in Kansas in the 1870s. And German immigrants arriving in Kansas after a century in Russia brought this variety with them after smuggling out of Russia. I'm standing by the side of a road out in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma. You may wonder, why am I here? Well, I'm looking east, and you can see to the west, and along this line, on noon, April 22nd, 1889, there was a land rush here. The only area in Oklahoma that was unassigned to Indians was called the unassigned lands, where present-day Oklahoma City exists. And on this line, on that date, 50,000 people lined up and ran for homesteads of 160 acres. And overnight, virtually, the cities of Guthrie and Oklahoma City became towns. We're inside the Oklahoma Territorial Museum in Guthrie, Oklahoma. First came Indian Territory, and then after this area was opened up in 1889 and became settled, eventually Indian Territory became Oklahoma Territory, and Guthrie became the capital of the territory. When Oklahoma became a state in 1907, it was decided to move the state capital to Oklahoma City. History, you may have heard of the Boomers and the Sooners. The Boomers were a group of people who wanted the Oklahoma Territory to be opened for settlement. As early as 1880, a gentleman by the name of Payne led a group of people down to Oklahoma City and established a town called Ewing. And he was removed by the Army and taken to Fort Smith and convicted of trespassing. Not only were they people trying to get in Oklahoma, they also had help in Congress, and that helped create the act that opened Oklahoma to settlement. The Sooners were those who jumped the line ahead of time and staked their claims early. Rules for settlement, according to the Homestead Act of 1862, said that homesteaders must be at least 21 years of age. They could be younger if they were the head of a household. Single, widowed, separated, or divorced women were also eligible to get a claim. Foreign citizens had to show intent to become U.S. citizens and stay on the claim. The homesteader could claim 160 acres or a town lot, but not both. The homesteader had to stay on the land 5 years and make improvement to get final title to the land. Union veterans could deduct time spent in the Civil War from those 5 years. There were often a lot of disputes over claims. A Boomer leader, William L. Couch, a Sooner, stepped off the railroad right away at noon to claim land in what would become downtown Oklahoma City. Couch died on April 21st, 1890, after being shot over his disputed claim. He was buried on his claim 1 year after the opening. In Stillwater, the fifth largest city in Oklahoma Territory, the Agricultural and Mechanical College, now known as Oklahoma State University, was established in 1890. That same year in Norman, once the contender for the capital, received the Territorial University, which is now called the University of Oklahoma. We are at the Oklahoma City Memorial to the bombing of the federal building. The 901 on this wall is the time that the bomb exploded. These are the sole surviving walls of the building. And on the lawn is a chair representing each person who died. 168 people died in the explosion. And each chair on this lawn represents one person who died. The lawn is in the footprint of the original building. These smaller chairs represent the children who were killed in the daycare center. I'm standing at the south entrance of the Oklahoma State Capitol. There's something very unique about this side of the Capitol building, because if I turn around, there's an oil well. Oil was discovered in the eastern side of Oklahoma City in 1928. It became one of the largest and most productive oil fields in the world.
We are currently in the northwest section of Oklahoma City. This area is called the Heritage Hills Historic District. It's a residential area associated with the early leaders of Oklahoma in business, industry, and finance. This particular house is the Hefner Mansion. He was Oklahoma City Mayor and Supreme Court Justice Robert Hefner. This is the Overholster Mansion. It was built in 1903 as the home to Henry Overholster, who developed major properties in Oklahoma City.
This is the Hales Mansion. It's a 1916 home of William Hales, a pioneer Oklahoma City business person.
This is one of the magnificent houses in the area. We don't know what it is or who it belonged to, but it's really cool, and it's for sale in case you're interested.
Later that evening, we visited the historic section of Oklahoma City called Stockyard City, home of the world's largest stockyards. We had a delicious steak dinner at the 100-year-old Cattleman Cafe. We hope you join us for our next video when we will be visiting friends and family in Arkansas and Georgia.